And great news! Following on from our last Deus Ex video, the mystery of the praxis points, the talent trees, going into this DLC that's slotted into the main story. If you play Human Revolution, we've finished it. You do get all your praxis points back. In fact, in a very bizarre decision, they have these boxes right at the end of the DLC that you unlock, and it just gives you everything that you came into the DLC with, despite the fact you already have a full inventory from doing the DLC. So it all just falls on the floor, and it's like, oh, and you also had all this stuff coming into the DLC, so you end up leaving it all there, because very unlikely you don't have a full inventory at this point. But they do give you all your points back, so thumbs up. That's good. All your stuff does come back to you, and you end up just speccing your character out, and you've already put all your points into stuff during the DLC, so you just end up with a bunch of extra points that you can flesh out your character with and get back to full strength. It was very nice to get all my stuff back. I was immediately like, oh, thank God, I get my Icarus landing back, my poison breathing, blah, 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 blah. I get all that stuff back. So that's cool. All right, happy with that. That was good. But let's talk about the DLC itself. I give this like a C, I guess, if I was to rank the DLC. I think it is a poor decision to put it in forcibly into the MSQ. I think this should have been, like normal DLC, is like an extra bonus at the end. Like the mystery of what happened in this pod. Although, it's very contrived. So, let me set this up for you before we go into the details of the DLC of how you get in and get out. Is you go to this dock and you're told to go into a stasis pod that's being shipped to where Megan should be. The hunt for Megan. Where's Megan? Is the main story crux here. We got to get Megan back. But along the way, you actually end up at this other base, and you wake up in the stasis pod, you've been captured, they've taken all your powers away, and they're not sure who you are, but now you're on this ship, this weird ship where stuff's going down. We'll come back to that, because it's really good. Then when you finish the DLC, they're like, well, okay, we need to get him back, we need to get the character back into the main story, so they go, you need to get in another stasis pod and go on the boat again. And Jensen just goes, wait, you want me to just get in another stasis pod and do this whole thing again? And they're like, yeah! You need to do that because that's what happened in the main story, and we kind of need that to keep going. And it's so contrived and so silly, but you kind of roll with it because you get what's going on. I really think this DLC would have been much better served as being a bonus thing that you go on that would basically just be a side story. What happened here? What was this mystery? And you go on it, and then after you finish the main game, you wouldn't be that bothered about being reset because you're not bothered about getting back to the main story where you had all your stuff. It wouldn't have felt as unusual, and ultimately, the sad truth is the events of the DLC, at least from what I can tell, actually don't matter at all because the main story didn't have this content, so the main story doesn't reference it in any way, shape, or form. It's just an extra story. Okay. There it is. Let's talk about DLC itself. I stick to what I said in the first video of the setting. I do not like the setting on the boat. It had a couple, as the DLC played out, of interesting areas. Namely, there was a prison that was quite cool. And also a sort of like lab complex, we could call it that. It's a very small area that has a variety of buildings in, where the team that got kidnapped, Megan's team, it has been forced to work, right? They're in like indentured servitude to these people who kidnapped them to keep working, and they've all kept on working. And they actually have a variety of different takes on this, but they ultimately all want their freedom, right? They all want their freedom. So you wander around these buildings, hunting down the various doctors in order to coordinate an escape plan for them. That's generally the interesting areas. The rest of it takes place on like a boat, which is all extraordinarily similar, and finishes on the boat as well. So that stuff I wasn't a fan of, like environmentally. I thought it was very plain Jane compared to the main game, is what I want to say, where you've got sewers, upper streets, you're going to China, you're going to Singapore, you're going to all these different places that are nice variety, you know, from Detroit to the police station, and all the areas in there is much more interesting for me than what they provided in the DLC. That's that. Let's talk about the story. Pretty good. Like, surprisingly dark. We find out that what's going on is women are being captured, like innocent women are being captured, and they're being hooked into data centers, essentially, so their brains can be linked to computers in order to magnify their computational power. And this is needed for a variety of projects because ultimately the company that's doing this, the evil company, because these women are all dying because they last about a year, it says, and then they die. So there's a lot of women just being killed to make this work, but they need it for like geothermal research and a bunch of secret projects. There's references to something called Omega. They need this computational power, and the doctors that are working on them. So it's Tiffany and Gary, Dr. Tiffany and Dr. Gary. These two are the people who have been assigned to try and stop the women from dying. But they're also kind of complicit in the fact that they're dying. So you discover a bunch of emails, especially from Tiffany, who's like, we can't do this. Like, we're just killing people. And you get this really corporate email response, which I really liked because it's very corpo, where it's like, we hear you, we understand. And they're clearly very evil because it's like, your voice is heard, but you should do it. And then manipulative tactics like, your empathy is why you need to do this. Because without your empathy, in the resulting millions of lives that will be saved by going through this process, then this is just evil. But with you there, then it gives it some hope. And these people are feeling, and all the time you're doing this and you're in a room where there's these women that have been like strapped to medical beds and their spines are being ripped out and they're just pouring with blood and they're begging to die. And you're like, okay, this is just messed up in all ways. Yeah, very grim. And our main antagonist here is, I think he's called Burke, who is basically a psychopath, or a sociopath might be more apt to what he is. He's a sociopath who is keeping this whole operation running, making sure people are doing what they're doing, and he has no qualms about the loss of human life at all. It doesn't affect him in any way. He's more than happy to, the ends justify the means kind of character, who's going to be our big boss at the end of this little DLC. The boss fight is interesting. Yeah, the boss fight is interesting. You can go like invisible and stuff like that while you're fighting him. Very simple though. You just end up throwing grenades. You get disabled from your powers again, and it makes the one issue I have with this is it made the screen all fuzzy if you did this. Also, if you took the limb processor earlier in the game, which I did because I knew it was bad. It was very like nothing in Deus Ex is maybe as a teenager you would fall for it, I guess. But as an adult, yeah, you know this is a bad idea. They're like, you should come here and have this new chip installed. And you're like, well, that's obviously going to come into the game later. And it does. It does, shockingly. Where you end up fighting him. It's quite cool. It's a little stealth fight. Reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 2 against the Ninja. Similar sort of idea, that Raiden fight versus the Ninja. It's very similar to that, where it's invisible and you've got to move around this sort of like office sort of area. Very cool environment to fight him. That was good. And then that's the end, right? You managed to, the biggest challenge I faced in this DLC was really kind of fun but tricky, is that Burke unleashes poison to puts you in a sort of Dark Knight-ish situation. You can either save Tiffany and get her out and she's going to whistle blow this whole operation, or you can save the prisoners, the innocents, who are also being gassed. You can't save both. And you end up at a console where you have to make this choice. And there's a mysterious sort of muffled voice telling you must make the choice. But you know Deus Ex by this point, and you're thinking to yourself, there's probably a way of doing both. And so I had a look around for a while, and then my chat, fair enough, went, there is a way of doing both, and you can't do it. And I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. But my mindset is, why can't I do it? That was my thought process, is what is it and why can't I do it? So the obvious answer is I don't have the proper augments to do it, which meant I was missing various things. Like I was missing slow fall or no fall damage, which meant do I have to drop down a massive container? The obvious one that I went with was breaking through walls, and sure enough, I had one talent point available to me, so I took breaking through walls, and sure enough, there was a bunch of breakable walls. So I did a route, and you're on a timer for this. So when I realized the situation, I had 5 minutes, I think, or 3.5 minutes, something like that, left on the timer. So I made a quick save there and just went exploring. I logically concluded that we probably needed to get to the maintenance area. And then I found an email which sort of backed that up, is that there was a damaged silo down there, and they mentioned the poisons coming from a silo. So I was like, okay, we probably need to get to maintenance and break the silo in order to leak the poison out into the water, which will save both people. But the maintenance area is, you're prevented from getting to the maintenance area through the usual pathway, through a scanner that won't let you through. So I was like, okay, there's probably a vent, or breaking through a wall will allow me to drop down somewhere in order to get to this area. So I did a lot of reloading here, a lot of save scumming to try and find this area. Ultimately, it ended up that all around the prison area, which is where this takes place, is tons of boxes. There must be maybe 20 boxes against the walls. One of them is hiding a vent. So I ultimately, I was running around looking for places to go and moving boxes. So I moved a lot of them. I think I moved 19 out of 20. I missed the last one. When I did do that, I ended up in a room with green tubing, which was clearly the gas. I'm like, this is the room. So I like threw a grenade at it, but nothing happened. I couldn't interact with it. I was like, that's really weird. What is going on here? And then out of frustration, I shot I shot a gun at it that I happened to have, and that worked. That just broke it. I was like, why do grenades work here? I totally had the idea, but that solved it, and I loved that. Like, ultimately, I liked that. It's like, you were presented with this very plain Jane choice of choose one or the other, but because of the nature of Deus Ex, your brain kicked in and went, there is probably a way around this, and sure enough, there was. And you get ample rewards for doing that as well. It's like, you came up with this solution we didn't see. That's awesome. If you go here, I've left, like, Quinn, who's the sort of quartermaster of the ship, essentially, leaves you a bunch of stuff, like ammo and stuff like that, to go through. So the DLC gameplay, I give an A. I really enjoyed the gameplay. A lot of sneaky sections, a lot of stuff like that. I realize now as I'm talking, I've confused the end of the game with a bit of the DLC, where the labs and stuff were with the doctors. That's actually the main game. We'll get to that in a second. But the DLC itself, A, setting, a C, unfortunately. Let's talk about the main game then. So I'm nearly finished with the main game, and now I'm thinking about it. Yes, after you get back in the stasis pod at the end of the DLC, you end up on the island where Megan's team is, which has got the labs and things like that. The only issue I have here, because we're definitely near the very end of the game, is everybody who had the limb chip replacement that I had, they've sent out a signal that's essentially driving them all insane. So all augmented people globally, it seems, are at each other's throats. And Hugh Darrow, I think his name, who is the progenitor of augments, he's the father of the augmented systems. He's the one who's initiated it, because it's not what he intended. He thought he was blessing the world, and in his eyes, it's been twisted and morphed into something evil. And the people who've created this process are Megan's team. Essentially, they're the ones who've managed to make this possible. My big issue here, story-wise, and I've had issues with the main story all the way through, is that all these people who are, by definition, pretty intelligent people. Like, Megan is a genius, right? Who came up with this whole system. David Sarif is the head of the Sarif Industries. He should be a pretty smart guy. Hugh should be a pretty smart guy. The progenitor of augments. All these people should be pretty smart guys. Yet the story has to have them being really stupid in order for it to make sense. That the Illuminati is running this whole operation. And I really don't like that. My best example here is Megan herself. You find Megan, and there's obviously implications because she's created all these things, is that she's complicit. I actually thought that's where the story was going. I think that would have been more interesting, is that you find Megan, and she's actually fully complicit and fully on board with this, and she had some reason to actually join in with the baddies in order to create this process. Maybe one of her discoveries was that this is a whole bad thing, but that's not what they do. Instead, they've had her create these codes and biochips and things like that, and that are now destroying the human populace. And she just goes, "They never told me they'd use it for that." Like, you know what this could be used for. You made it. Like, it's. I don't know if Bex can find it, but there's a great Mitchell and Webb sketch with the guy's called like Dr. Evil or Dr. Insanity or something. And he's building like mega death rays and death robots and things like that. And the military is funding this, obviously. And he's like, no, this was supposed to be used for good. Like, he's built the super death ray to scan things faster at supermarket checkouts. And they're like, well, we're obviously going to use this to murder a bunch of people. He's like, no. And it just goes on and gets more absurd because of how stupid it is. This is clearly what you're building. And they're all sort of like that. You get towards the end, I didn't manage to convince Hugh Darrow to see the error of his ways, unfortunately. So I just punched him in the face. And as we move towards the end of the game, it turns out everybody is here at Panchaea. It's in the Arctic. Sarif is there, and you have to find them. It doesn't give you the locations of where they are. Instead, it's like explore and find them. And it basically becomes a zombie game at this point, because all the augmented people working there are now going insane. So rather than just being soldiers that you usually deal with, now you're dealing with essentially zombies. And so I was hunting them down, and when you speak to them and you do find them, they're kind of like, this is bad. I can't believe it's being used this way. And you're like, so dumb. It's so dumb. Like, obviously, this is how this was going. And they all want you to lie. Like, David Sarif is like, what you need to do now, Jensen, is you need to broadcast a signal that this is their fault, even though it's not. Like, it's the human front's fault. And it's like, so you want me to lie? And he's like, it'll save augmentation forever. And I'm like, everybody sucks here. Everybody sucks. Which is fine, because they want that. They want that. I just don't like the idea that the people we're dealing with are so dumb as to what they were doing. That bothers me a little bit. But it is okay. I don't know how much we got left. I actually think we have about 15 or 20 minutes left of the game, potentially. Something really low like that. So I'll come back with an ultimate conclusion as to what the story wraps up as. I know some people are like, are we going to do Mankind Divided? Which is apparently a superior game. Because so far, I'm enjoying Deus Ex. It's got faults, though, for sure. But it is old, so a lot of it is that. And I think the story, I think this is kind of feels to me like a period of time where they didn't trust mature storytelling. You know, when we started getting games like The Last of Us, which had some very well-written, mature stuff. This is like the early fledgling process there for this. And it's much more teenagey, you know. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, sometimes they're reading off all the characters like Tong, and the Dragon Queen, and the AI news report, and they're just listing off a bunch of connections all the way through, like some sort of crazy whiteboard. And I don't really get it at that point. I'm like, I don't know. Then the Illuminati's coming into it, and these people and these people. There's a lot of characters doing a lot of different stuff to create subterfuge and backstabbing, and no one trusts each other. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, you're losing me a little bit at this point. I'm trying to follow it, but yeah, some of these characters I haven't seen, because we do have that occasional return of a character that you haven't seen for a long part of the game. It's like, you, and you're like, I can't remember who you are. But also, I have a terrible memory, so that's playing a part in it. I'm looking forward to seeing what the ultimate conclusion is here, but considering the next game is called Mankind Divided, I don't think this is a game that has a happy ending. Let's put it that way. But next video will be our final thoughts on Deus Ex Human Revolution, and obviously whether you should play it or not. But yeah, so I'll see you then. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.